ladies and gentlemen, it's time to lock up your daughters as we take a look at 1,000 Convicts and a Woman. Can a film's title be both the making of it and an albatross around its neck? That certainly seems to be the case with 1,000 Convicts and a Woman, a title that evokes so many sleazy images, though sure are unfair odds, and leads you down the path of thinking the film will be a tough, mean-spirited women in prison film, none of which this film can really live up to. However, in this case, I think it's a tad unfair to tear into a film for not living up to a title that wasn't even its original title. 1,000 Convicts and a Woman is in fact a 1971 British film, shot and released in Britain and the rest of Europe as Fun and Games. A more honest, but let's face it, fairly lacklustre title, certainly lacking the exploitation film punch of 1,000 Convicts and a Woman. Whatever you call it, this film tells the story of a nympho. Literally, as the on-screen title in the US version is 1,000 Convicts and a Woman, followed by, in brackets, story of a nympho. And a rather young nympho at that, as Angela Thorne is a 17-year-old strumpet just off the plane from a brief period of school in America, and all ready to cause chaos on homegrown soil. The film and its main character wastes no time in letting you know what they're all about, as Angela strips off her school uniform and slides into a miniskirt in the back of her father's car, fully aware of the distracting influence she's having over Daddy's chauffeur. So this does belong with a number of British films from this period that were centred around prick-teasing teenage girls whose sexuality spells disaster for any man in the vicinity. Baby Love with Linda Hayden would be a good example of this type of film, as would Twinkie with Susan George. 1,000 Convicts and a Woman is far more humorous in its approach than those earlier films though, and at times comes close to being an outright spoof on those films' fixation with jailbait and amateur psychology. In what is surely the greatest piece of dialogue in the film, Angela diagnoses herself as a little psychotic, a schizophrenic with undetermined paranoia, a nymphomaniac with irresistible bisexual tendencies. I have alternative sadistic and masochistic impulses. I'm also an inveterate exhibitionist and will probably die of sexual malnutrition. But apart from that, I'm not the least mixed up. For all of that psychological baggage, Angela isn't the one on the way to prison. Rather, her father is a governor of a rather unusual and progressive prison, one that lacks walls, where the prisoners are allowed to wander about performing menial tasks, and the place resembles a British holiday camp rather than a prison. In fact, I'm sure there are British holiday camps that look more like prisons than this place. Despite the lack of security, the prison seems curiously devoid of any conflict. That is until Angela takes up residence on the prison's grounds, where upon the arrival of a teenage nymphomaniac in a prison full of female-deprived menfolk causes all the problems that you'd expect. Seemingly spurred on by her father's cold indifference to her, Angela is soon smoking pot, sneaking out of the prison in order to seduce teenage campers and blackmailing one of the prison guards. Most of her energy though seems to go on providing temptation to 3 of the inmates: Paul, who also doubles as her father's chauffeur, Carl, a black American, and Gribney, a repulsive child killer and paedophile. Angela excels in finding a person's sore points and then tormenting them over it. In Paul's case, questioning his sexuality, remarking, "You're not a queer, are you? No, you're just plain square." Although a later trippy dream sequence in which Paul imagines himself bedding down with both Angela and his girlfriend, but ends with him in bed with a shirtless Gribney, does make a case for Paul being a tortured closet bisexual. Much of the film's drama, though, emanates from whether the fundamentally decent Paul and Carl can resist her and not jeopardise their chance of early parole, and just how much teasing and provocation can Angela throw Gribney's way before she places herself in danger. As you might be able to tell, 1,000 Convicts and a Woman is a film with a number of credibility issues. It's a big ask to believe a prison governor would allow his teenage daughter to wander about his prison and freely mingle with hardcore criminals. It's also one of those films that tries to explain 2 characters who are meant to be related to each other having completely different accents, with that old excuse that they've been schooled abroad for a while. In this case, we're meant to believe that a spell at a Boston school has managed to erase all traces of Britishness from Angela, who has returned home in the form of the blonde, bubbly, and as Californian as they come, Alexandra Hay. Fortunately, this is a film with a sense of humour about itself, and doesn't take itself too seriously, frequently acknowledging its narrative absurdities in its own dialogue. A Thousand Convicts and a Woman was actually written by an Oscar-nominated writer, whose name was, appropriately enough, Oscar Brodney to be precise, who had written Harvey, a famous James Stewart film of the 1950s, as well as one of the later Abbott and Costello comedies, and lived till the ripe old age of 100. Even if you didn't do any research into the people behind this film though, I think you can really tell it was written by someone with talent and experience, and Brodney's dialogue is frequently sharp and witty. The quality of the acting here is also another strong point, with the likes of Sandor Ellis, Harry Brad, and then husband and wife acting duo Neil Hallett and Tracy Reed, providing solid support to American leading lady Alexandra Hay, who really takes the bull by the horns here, delivering quips such as, "My, but you're such a big man," like a heir apparent to Mae West, as well as sporting one of the most devilish laughs you're likely to hear outside of Angelique in Dark Shadows. As a rule, Britain didn't really do prison set exploitation movies. This film and House of Whipcord are the only two films that completely fit into this rather exclusive category. Just as there is only really one British biker film with Psychomania, and only one British blaxploitation film with The Beast Must Die, the prison exploitation genre is something British cinema had a bit of a nibble at, but never fully sank its teeth into. The fact that the lead actress here was an American, as was the film's writer and the film's producer, does lead you to suspect that the intended audience for A Thousand Convicts and a Woman was the American driving market, where there was more of a history of prison set exploitation films. While A Thousand Convicts and a Woman does attempt to disguise its UK location and did have a release in the UK, its UK release seems to have been a very small scale affair. In the UK, it was released on the second half of a double bill with Wedding Night, a now near completely forgotten drama about sexual repression and birth control, starring Dennis Waterman, Tessa Wyatt and Alexandra Bastido. In the US, however, A Thousand Convicts and a Woman seems to enjoy a lengthy theatrical life, with American International Pictures once again providing a textbook example of how to market a film exploitation style, with theatre managers encouraged to dress their employees up in convicts' uniforms, and star Alexandra Hay billed as an actress whose reputation as a sex pot has spread across 2 continents. In the hands of others, A Thousand Convicts and a Woman could have easily become a misogynistic diatribe, with an axe to grind about female sexuality and poor little rich girls leading men to rack and ruin. But A Thousand Convicts and a Woman is surprisingly light on criticism of Angela. Like one of its male characters, A Thousand Convicts and a Woman seems secretly amused, if not infatuated, by her, an attitude that moulds the film into an agreeable fun ride as we revel in the anti-heroine's antics as she causes all manner of soap opera-ish mischief and mayhem in the pursuit of cheap thrills. Only towards the end of the film, when Angela falsely accuses Carl of rape, and in turn causes Paul and Carl to go on the run, do we feel our allegiances switch to the long-suffering Paul and Carl? Even at the end of the film though, when Angela's true nature is revealed to her father and the rest of the world, the film is not without sympathy for her, and seems to be suggesting that Angela's father should shoulder some of the blame for her wayward ways, due to the lack of emotion and interest he has shown towards her. Considering its subject matter, A Thousand Convicts and a Woman is a fairly tame film, which comes as an even greater surprise considering that director Ray Austin was fresh off the director's chair of Virgin Witch. For films made by the same man in the same time period, Virgin Witch and A Thousand Convicts and a Woman have very little in common. Virgin Witch is an explicit and humorless film. A Thousand Convicts and a Woman, however, is playful in nature, yet fleeting in its use of nudity and sex. Even describing this as a sex film, it seems to be pushing it a bit. In fact, no 2 Ray Austin films ever feel alike, leading you to suspect that Austin was something of a director for hire, and that the personalities of his films were moulded by their writers and their producers rather than Austin himself. Austin would go on to have quite the career in American television, helming episodes of Airwolf V, Magnum PI and The Master, and even in 1971 was demonstrating a considerable flair for action set pieces, with Gribney's prison yard attack on Angela and the jailbreak at the end of the film, pointing the way forward to Austin's future in the action-packed world of 1980s American television. A Thousand Convicts and a Woman vanished for many years. As far as I can tell, it was never released anywhere on VHS or DVD. Only in recent years has the film been dusted off by MGM and shown on a few American TV channels, where it inevitably got bootlegged and DVD-R copies started making their way around the collector's circuit. The film has, shock horror, also been known to pop up on YouTube now and then. The fact that for years people's only insight into this film has been through staring at its poster, stills and press book, have set up expectations that have led to disappointment when people have finally laid eyes on the film itself, and led to grumblings that the film isn't as sleazy as its poster, that there's only about 30 convicts in the film rather than 1,000, etc, etc. However, I do think this film is more than worthy of a second look, and re-evaluated for what it is rather than what it was made out to be. For my money, it's a film that puts on a hell of a show and delivers the exploitation film goods, just not the exploitation film goods that were promised in the poster. So, go in there expecting teenage nymphomania, pot smoking, exciting action scenes, daddy issues and a spirited performance from the prematurely deceased Miss Hay. Just don't really go in there expecting 1,000 convicts and a woman. Anyway, that's all for now, so all that remains for me to say is good night and God bless.